Hello, Dobrohodnia, and a very warm welcome to our international webinar, Chernobyl Tourism for Peace. Let us pray together for peace in Ukraine and the end of this long conflict that has cost more than 10,000 of lives, including many women and children, and almost 2 million refugees and internal displacement. Before we start, I would like to ask you to observe a moment of silence for all the victims of the nuclear disaster and wars. I would like to thank our wonderful speakers today from all around the world. For some of them is early morning and some of them late at the night. And a special thanks to the participation and support of the War Museum of Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Now I give the word to our fabulous moderator today, Dr. Bridget Trower, who published an important book, The Way of the Peaceful Traveler, Dare to Care and Connect. Bridget, please, floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Reza, for firstly inviting me to start off with, and then asking me to moderate here. So from my perspective, thank you very much again for everybody being present, and welcome to everyone. And I'm most delighted and honoured to be present here today, to be surrounded by all these distinguished speakers on this panel. When Reza asked me, and I'm reading this off too, to just let you know off my notes, because when Reza asked me initially to sort of come on board and moderate, I've asked myself, what could I consider as a focus, or what would I consider myself as a focus that would come under the title of Chernobyl Tourism for Peace? What will we talk about under this title, particularly given all our different perspectives? Of course, here today we will also hear not just about Chernobyl, about tourism and peace, but also from the Hiroshima perspective, I understand, and possibly also other places, because there are many of them around the world, as we all know. I think personally, today's seminar and the place we're talking about, the places and attractions, serve as a reminder of our past and as a learning opportunity for all of us in the here and now and for the future. So when I saw the title and was asked to come on board, the first thought that came to my mind is actually a quote that is close to my heart, and that is by Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, and it says, "He who does not know his past cannot make the best of the present and the future, for it is from the past that we learn." So with this in mind, I'm now honoured to briefly introduce everyone around here today. And please, again, allow me to possibly pronounce your names incorrectly, because I haven't really practiced and I haven't asked you how they are correctly pronounced. I also like to point out the extended brief biographies are, of course, available on this website. So I'm just introducing very briefly, and bear with me. And if I miss out on any information that you personally would like to be highlighted, you, again, please highlight that in your presentations. I was going to start off with Dr. Talib Rifai. I'm not sure whether he is already on board. I believe he's also present here today in our presentation.
Yeah, I am calling him. He got to be here.
Okay. Well, I would introduce him first, and perhaps most of you are familiar with him anyway. But Dr. Rifai, as most of you know, held the position of Secretary General of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, UNWTO, based in Madrid, Spain, from 2010 until the end of 2017. And his accolades are extensive, and I will not be able to go into them. However, with a background in economics, he has extensive experience in international and national public service, the private sector, and academia, including the post of Minister of Tourism and Antiquity in Jordan. And I'll be delighted to see Dr. Rifai here shortly. I shall introduce next up Professor Dr. Mark Gopin as the Director of the Centre for World Religions, Diplomacy and Conflict Resolutions, CRDC, the James H. Lau Professor at the School of Conflict Analysis and Resolution at George Mason University, Arlington, Virginia, USA. He has pioneered projects at CRDS in Afghanistan, Iran, Syria, Palestine, and Israel, and is the author of various books and appeared on various international media. Next one, if I may introduce Mariana Oleski. I hope that is correct, Mariana. She's the president of State Agency for Tourism Development at Ukraine, former director of Tourism Development Center, Lviv City Council, and former head of Tourism Department, Administration of Culture and Tourism. The next one on my particular introduction list, I have here Sergei. And again, there's so much to talk about, and I'm sure, Sergei, you will mention a lot of things that I will not be able to draw on. I will just quickly introduce you as a founder of Chernobyl Tours, that you are a radiation renaissance officer. I'm sure you will tell us more about that. And you're also a writer and environmentalist. Sergei has a very colourful background on which he draws in all of his work. Next one I would like to introduce here is Dr. Yukako Saito, who is a local traditional ecologist, ecological knowledge program provider for restoration of biodiversity and the world peace. He's the founder of Genuine Education Network, GEN in Italy, living in beautiful northern Italy, and the CEO of GEN in Japan, which is an innovative community-based education provider for global sustainability. Yukako, I would like to mention, was chosen by Forbes Japan for the award of 55 Japanese women fighting in the world. Next one up, if I may introduce Mary Poppio. I hope that is correctly pronounced. Mary is the co-founder of PCV, Peaceful Cultural Village, a youth-led peace education non-profit dedicated to creating a sustainable peace culture through peace tourism, social entrepreneurship, and youth empowerment. She now lives in Hiroshima City, where she and her team design Hiroshima-based learning experiences for thousands of people every year. The last person I have not mentioned yet, and I'm actually looking for Reza. Perhaps Reza, you would like to quickly introduce yourself, or shall I do that on your behalf?
Please go ahead.
To do
Please
that.
go ahead and introduce me. I'm with some technical
Okay.
issues to get calligraphy.
Reza Soltani.
Yeah, thank you.
He's on. Okay, he's here too. Okay, Reza, actually, I'll quickly introduce you then. You are a marketing psychologist and you live in Brussels, Belgium. Reza is a specialist in destination marketing, digital tourism, and branding. Reza is also the founder of Tourism Webinar. He has recently co-founded the Peace Festivals International and is the director of Peace Tours International. He is creating peace tours in many parts of the world, including North Korea, Gypsy Village in Romania, and Syrian refugee camps. Reza is also the Director of Communication and International Relations of International Institute for Peace Through Tourism. I think I have introduced everyone. If I have missed out on anybody, please do let me know. I think I've covered everybody. Well, after my introduction here, let us just go straight into the first presentation. I'm not sure if Dr. Rifa is on board now.
He was here, and because he was on the street somewhere, and I don't see him now again. But maybe we can continue with Mark.
Yes. Oh, before we go into it, let me just quickly also remind everybody that today's session, of course, is fully recorded. And along with the extended biographies and the presentations, any PowerPoint presentations will be available on tourismwebinar.com. And there will you also find any previous webinars you might be interested in. So, yes, shall we go ahead with perhaps Mark, if that's okay with you?
Of course. Okay.
Are you?
Yeah, it freezes here and there, but can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
We can hear you very well.
All right. I hope it's not my connection. It's always a question of which connection is slowing things down. It's really wonderful to spend time with all of you to talk topics that are both very somber and also hopeful. The hopeful part of all of this is the way in which we've gathered as people in unprecedented ways across the world. My background is that I have studied and been a peace builder since my 20s. I've been studying and working in war zones for the last 20, 30 years. And I have students from all over the world. And I build my theories and my books and my practices based on what my students are teaching me. And so I work very deeply now with a very large network of Syrian refugee women, for example, and I've been working with Syrians for about 18 years. And I do in-depth work on personal empowerment, mediation skills, ways in which women play a unique role, especially in conflict zones where all of the power resides in the use of force, but women have a different kind of psychological and ethical and spiritual force, especially in terms of protectors of families. And all of this work in these years has led me to a deep commitment to the search for meaning. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of the Holocaust, wrote a classic, Man's Search for Meaning. And what we've done since then is that we have studied in psychology and now in positive psychology, and most recently in neuroplasticity and the psychology of how we make decisions, but also how we move from violence to peace. The latest work for 5 years is finally coming out from my wonderful Oxford publishers on compassion and reasoning. I've tried to develop a relationship between compassion part of the brain and the reasoning part of the brain. And it turns out that women under duress in war zones have far more compassion and far more reasoning ability than most people do. In general, when we are stressed, when we are all under COVID, when we are all under suspicion, our brain tends to become extremely focused on paranoia, on conspiracy, because we lurch, we look for anything to hold on to. And yet compassion is a liberating part of our brain. It's a liberating part of our nature that goes back millions of years. And so what we can do to cultivate compassion is not only something that all the major religious traditions and wisdom traditions have advocated, it is also something that's extremely healthy for the brain. And it has extremely good effects on the metabolics of our nature. When we feel too much of the suffering of the people of Chernobyl, it starts to make us burnt out. It starts to make us withdraw. It starts to make us angry. But when we go or we engage people from Chernobyl, then our compassion side of the brain starts to be activated. And compassion, and there's serious neuroscience research on the difference between compassion and love and engagement versus feeling the pain and the misery of people suffering. That becomes your suffering empathically in terms of mirror neurons and many other ways in which we absorb the pain around us, like a contagion. So what Reza's brilliant work around the world and what a lot of us have tried to do for 20, 30 years, and many people on this panel, is that we've tried to spread a contagion of a different kind of compassion and reasoning that makes the world a meaningful, beautiful place, even in the context of misery and challenge, and now global threat in terms of the future of our climate and our sustainability. So let's come back then for a minute to Chernobyl and to Ukraine. Here's a perfect example. My family comes from, in 1910, my family left Ukraine in Volhynia Gubernia, in a small, near Rivne, a small town called Troyanovka. And my family, the Gopin and Melamed families, came from that town in a time of great suffering. Thank God they left before the Holocaust, when everybody was wiped out. But the fact is that I had a longing to know my place of origin. And many of my family don't even know the name of the place they came from. I did the research. Why did I do that? Why did I do Google Earth? Why do I look at pictures of Troyanovka again and again? Why do I do that? Because my brain longs for home. It longs for a sense of place, a meaningfulness, origins. These are things very deep in the mind, and we have to respect people's homes, even when there's tragedy associated with it, and help them with a process of reunification, or what psychologists call integration of the different parts of the mind, so that in the end, the mind is better able to function on what's the best policies, how can we live in peace, how can we accept all our enormous differences. The brain can't do all of that when it's suffering too much. It can do that when there's a sense of solidarity, a sense of commonality. And that's why tourism is much more than just tourism, or it should be, because it is the opportunity for the minds to meet each other in a far deeper way than the stereotypes and the misinformation and the deliberate misinformation of international systems of propaganda and control. And, you know, there's great journalism out there. There's wonderful things in the media. I'm not trashing the media, but a lot of it is pretty negative and sad. It's focused on the most painful things. And frankly, the brain can't handle all of that. So even the best information of the media system actually shuts down the mind. And so what we're interested in is what opens the mind. And when I say mind, I mean the mind and what we call the mind and heart. These things not only have thousands of years of wisdom tradition suggested that that is the key to enlightenment, that that is the key to nonviolence. It's also very, very good science. And so for me, this is the first time in my life to be engaged with Ukraine after all of these years of looking at it from a distance on Google Earth. And it fills my heart with warmth that I can make relationships, even if it's virtually, with folks from Ukraine because of my origins. So you see, we want to do that for people in general around the world. We want to help places revive and resuscitate after death and destruction, and then also to prevent further death and destruction by those bonds that create the highest emotions that human beings are capable of: love, care, altruism. They exist. We have overwhelming evidence in science that they exist, but we need to activate them by the structures of international meeting and international engagement that we are in control of. Especially everybody on this call, we're rather privileged people. We have some money in the bank, we have jobs. We're the ones that have to do this web together. I'm very honored to be part of this group. And I think that I think I'm going to leave it there. And very honored to hear and learn from all of you distinguished folks and incredible accomplishments that all of you have ethically and professionally. So thank you very much. Birgit, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you very much. I was. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Yes, thank you very much, Mark. Most insightful comments and most relevant, very much so. Looking at it today, I think, as you said, we're very fortunate to be here together and coming from all these different perspectives and bringing some ideas that are most relevant to the notion of peace or tourism for peace. And what you just highlighted brings to the fore the importance of our engagement as individuals, but also as society in this whole process. So thank you very much. Now, Riza, do you want us to connect possibly with Dr. Talab Rifai?
Dr. Talab Rifai is here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, good. I'm sorry, I'm in the beach in south of Spain now. That's why I wasn't able to connect earlier. Thank you so much for all being part of this wonderful team. Now, tourism is a powerful tool that brings people together. When people rub shoulders with each other, there is no stereotypes that can last there. When you have dinner with a family in a place you visit, listen to their music, listen to their stories, you cannot have any negative impressions of them. That's the beauty of peace. It's the beauty of tourism. It connects people together in an incredible way. And it does that. And doing that, it opens the minds, the hearts, and the eyes, everything. I've traveled the world, I'm a better person. Anybody that travels becomes better. That's for sure. Now, Chernobyl is very, very dear to me because Ukraine is very dear to me also. I think Ukraine is a wonderful country, and the pain and the suffering that they had gone to should never be forgotten. They have paid the price for somebody else, egos. Now, when we talk about peace, we should remember that the world is a better place today, much better than it used to be. Whether we like it or not, we are more connected, so we're more concerned about each other. We care more about each other. We know more about each other. That's why the world is a better place today than it used to be before. We can travel more, connect with each other more, can hear about each other more. This is a very important part because the more we care about each other, the better this world becomes. I thank you all, and I'm ready to answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much. Thank you, Riza.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rifai, and I hope you have a lovely day in Spain. We always delighted to be connected with you. And I'm sure some people might have some questions along the way, perhaps. Perhaps the next one, I would like to introduce Mariana. If you would like to present your thoughts for today. Are you there, Mariana?
Well, I am afraid that Mariana is not here yet because he had a important field business meeting, and she warned me that she might be late a bit, so she will join us later.
Okay, well, seeing that you are there, perhaps, Sergei, would you like to then go ahead and, present your amazing insights into Chernobyl tours?
Once more, hello to everyone, and thank you for inviting me to this meeting and to be a part of its organizing committee, so to say. Well, first of all, I would like to tell you one story that shows how efficient can be tourism for protecting people and for keeping peace. It is a story which I have learned when I did research for Chernobyl tours and previous research. This is a story of World War II, the story of nuclear bombardment of Japan. The thing was that the Americans had only 2 bombs, and they planned to drop them in a way as to have the most possible effect to make Japanese authorities to stop the war. And so they also counted on psychological effect, not only on the direct effect. And originally among the possible targets was the city of Kyoto. But in the committee which made the final selection of the targets, was one person who, as a student, visited Kyoto city, and he knew perfectly well that it's not a important, culturally important Japanese city, ancient capital of this empire and everything. He perfectly understood that it's a treasure of the humankind. And so he was the one who, so to say, crossed out this target and persuaded all who were in charge of selection of the targets that Kyoto should not be bombarded by, should not be evaporated by a nuclear bomb, by atomic bomb. At that time, there were no technical means to prevent Kyoto from being erased from the earth. And it was done by, you know, a certain, whatever, narrow processes in just one human mind of a person, of a former tourist of Kyoto. It is an ultimate goal to which I believe we all, the organizers, the researchers, the scholars, and the managers of tourism should aim. And I'm also very glad that clever Swedish and American and English researchers who studied texts of the leading Chernobyl tour operators, and first and foremost Chernobyl Tour, which I co-founded as one of my applied projects. So they generalized in academic terms what I wanted to tell, explaining why a person should, by all means, any person should visit Chernobyl. Because I just wanted to convey what I saw in tourists. Because in the morning, the tourists, you know, just, how shall I say it, just you know, ordinary, contemporary, mostly urban citizen, busy with multitude of everyday problems which overwhelm our mind. In the end of the day, I see, I saw and I will continue to see something changes in their mind. They re-rank their life priorities. They started to understand, they start understanding what is the most important in our life. And it is peace, it is health, it is family. You know, so it is not nature, the most basic things, but not, you know, those things which I constantly suggested us by explicit and implicit advertisement of different kinds, of course. And so they coined a term, existential tourism, which I like very much and which all professionals of tourism like very much, because in a way it expresses the core of the tourism, which is not only about recreation, learning new information, but about the deepest feeling of meaning of everyone's life. You know, but speaking about Chernobyl tours, I would like to say that what is embedded in them is my own way to peace, so to say, or rather to peace through war. Because, you know, frankly, when we were teenagers, we used to laugh on some of our grannies who would say, I don't need anything from life except for potatoes to survive, to have something to eat, and peace. And it sounds laughable for us, you know, crazy teenagers. But just in several years, an Afghan war of the Soviet Union started, and at that time I completed my study at the Kharkiv State University as a chemist. But we also had military department. I received the rank of lieutenant motorized infantry platoon commander there. And so I had quite a good chance to be thrown there and to get wounded or even to die. And so our generation realized that we were just lucky generation, because we escaped war, which in Ukraine was a common thing. And a prominent historian, Snyder, called several countries, including Ukraine, the bloodlands. The countries who were the battlefields of the World War I, battlefield of the World War II, and, you know, Holocaust, genocide of Ukrainian people by famine, and so on and so forth. So we were just in good luck. And 3 years before Chernobyl, I was mobilized to 1 month military training, which imitated the beginning of World War III. I am to tell you, it was one of the most impressive episodes of my life, because in the field conditions, we were taught how to act under when nuclear, or God forbid, thermonuclear bombs will be used, bacteriological and chemical weapons. Of course, the actual weapons were absent, but we were to imitate everything. And it was a Cold War, but later on I learned that it was, so to say, the hottest point of the Cold War. You know, and after this, I had a possibility to feel an absurdity of the World War III. Well, I started to think quite differently, and even to do some things, whatever was possible in the Soviet Union, to somehow remove this danger. And by the way, and most unfortunately, experts say that at the moment, we are much closer to the beginning of the World War III. Again, with nuclear and thermonuclear bombs and missiles, possibly with chemical and bacteriological weapons, than we were ever, except maybe Cuban missile crisis. And so it makes our efforts even more important. And so in Chernobyl tours, what I try to do is to kind of pay my debt to the dwellers of the Chernobyl area. Because when I was there as an officer of radiation surveillance, well, I did useful job. We worked in the core of the zone, measuring, reporting, aiding decontamination efforts. But part of our job was to visit villages. The villages were still inhabited, but which were likely to be evicted forever because of contamination. And I do remember this terrible feeling when you arrive to a live village, you know, everything goes as usual. We measure, and from these measurements, we would know that in the evening we will report it to the state, to our main military headquarters. In the morning, it will report our data to the state commission on mitigation. And the next day, this village will receive the order to get out forever. And it's terrible feeling, you know it, people come to you because you kind of embody authority, force, officer, 7-ton military armored vehicle, dosimetric instruments, they asking here and there, and what will be with us, and you can do nothing to help them. And it's a terrible feeling for any decent human being. And later on, I learned, and of course, after Chernobyl, I got plenty of strong impressions. And but in my post-traumatic stress disorder, which I hope I more or less coped with, important component was what is called the survivor's guilt. When you saw somebody and you could not help relieve or stop suffering or prevent the death. And I'm very glad that Chernobyl tourism kind of pays my debt for the local citizen, because now it employs dozens of them. They provide them not only with quite a decent salary, but also with the work of high status, with the work which gives importance for their life, because they aid literally 100,000 of people who visit the Chernobyl zone. And I am to tell you that in 2019, the last pre-coronavirus year, 125,000 tourists visited the Chernobyl zone only in this year. And what we are doing now, we have realized that we should shape more efficiently our message about the importance of peace, particularly in such place of Ukraine, which has a tragic history of military conflicts before, and which unfortunately has such conflict and its eastern border and its southern region is occupied. So our new tours will be a bit different from our regular tours. We will start, behind me there is a map of the Chernobyl zone, and I will try to make a kind of experiment and excuse me, I would like to have better feedback. Yeah, and I would like to show you. Here is the map of the Chernobyl zone. This is the main tourist entrance of this zone, and Kyiv is located roughly 100 kilometers to the south. So in our peace tours, we would enter the zone at the Detyatki checkpoint. Then we will drive to the village of Zalissa, located not far from the town of Chernobyl, which was the administrative center of this sub-region. And here we will visit the monuments to the victims of the World War II, both the former dwellers of this village and those who died when they liberated the village from the Nazi occupation. Then we would visit in the town of Chernobyl, which is an ancient, which from ancient times used to have a big Jewish population. So we will visit the mass grave of those exterminated by Holocaust. And then we will go and we will visit here in the forests. I would like to check. Yeah, here it is. In the depths of the forest, there is a unique installation, a monument of Cold War, above horizon radar, which its aim was to trace launches of the American ballistic intercontinental missiles, of course, with nuclear or semi-nuclear warheads. It is very impressive, huge antennas hidden in the forest, and I am glad that I am one of the team who saved this treasure. Then we would go to the, we would cross, here there is red forest, and our tourists will have first-hand experience of radiation contamination. We will cross the red forest and the western radiation trace. Then we will visit the town of Pripyat. the town which used to be an absolutely beautiful 50,000 town with 50,000 inhabitants, and people would see how post-nuclear humanless landscape, or rather cityscape, looks 35 years after the accident. And we will conclude this part of our tour at the site of the explosion, and we will show them the new safe confinement, a technical miracle constructed by all nations of the world to cover the radioactive ruin, highly radioactive ruin of the Unit 4. And eventually we will drive back to the town of Chernobyl, and we will have a stop at the monument of Chernobyl liquidators, who were just ordinary people like our tourists, and who did their best both as humans and as professionals to prevent, the name of this monument actually says, to those who saved the world. Well, in my professional opinion, it is a bit of exaggeration when we speak about Chernobyl. But anyway, this message is very important, and this monument is very, very penetrating, emotionally penetrating, because he depicts the figures of the Chernobyl liquidators as the sculptures, the same scale as normal human bodies, standing at the same level. And it is one of those messages. You know, well, and concluding, I would like to say that, you know, when I was becoming older, I realized that, you know, peace is like air. When we have it, we don't notice it. And war is in a way like radiation. Even if we are not at the front line, even if we don't see war, anyway, it harms our life, you know, and it destroys our life in many ways. And that, by the way, it is how Ukraine lives now. And so, concluding, I would like to say that tourism to the Chernobyl zone, tourism to many other places connected with military, tragic military events, tragic radiation, nuclear events, they we should use our potential more efficiently for promoting and sustaining and achieving the state of global peace. Well, and thank you for organizing this conference. Thank you.
I have a small question. May I ask?
Sure, you are welcome, if I may.
Thank you very much. As I'm from India, I'm teaching in an Indian university that is in Kolkata, in eastern part of India. So here we are working with a British organization, British Association of Cemeteries in South Asia, that how the British cemeteries, you know, during that British period, British rule, we are preserving and you know, inviting people from globe so that tourists can understand that how peacefully we are preserving the bodies of the Britishers and the Europeans. Now, my question is there any institutions where there is a course or program related to tourism and peace? Please, any one of you can give me the answer. I'll be very happy.
I'm sorry, thank you very much for your questions, but I advise that we should have the questions and the answers at the end of the webinar, if you don't mind. Anyway, I think Sergey noted your question, so if you don't mind, we will answer that at the end.
Sure, sure, please, because it's within the domain of your expertise.
Thank you. So Bridget, please, the next speaker.
Yes, thank you very much again, Sergey, and taking us down to the journey within Chernobyl and highlighting, you know, how important it is to touch base not just with their past and their history, but also the here and now and the reality of life and what it means for the future. So thank you very much for that elaboration. You already alluded to Japan and Hiroshima, so I think it would be lovely if we could have Dr. I can say it again, Yukako Saito. I hope I pronounced it correctly now. If you wouldn't mind, Yukako, would you mind telling your side of the story in regards to today's seminar?
No, thank you so much, Bridget. Okay, please allow me to share several images along with my story. So, may I? Okay, hope it work. Wait a minute. Okay. Does it work now? Yeah.
Yes, that looks good.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to acknowledge and thank to Reza for this amazing opportunity. And then I'm honored to share a challenge with you and learn and connect with you all. So I'm Yukako, I'm the CEO of Genuine Education Network. We prefer to be called GEN. It just stands for origin or source in Japanese. And then I'm also the founder of Genoa Consortium in Italy. So today I'm joining you from, actually, not from Japan, from Italy, Piemonte. So maybe some of you are, interested in what is the situation of the tourism in Italy. So I'm briefly tell you, but many tourism sectors and business players in Italy are convinced that tourism is in fully recover process and then moving forward very actively, especially for the high season in the autumn here. So before I get into the point, I'd like to tell you a little bit about GEN and myself. So I grew up in Japan, and after 10 years in the internet industry in Tokyo, actually the Fukushima tsunami disaster, a kind of biggest trigger event for my life changing. And then I moved as a single mom with 2 children to Italy in 2011. And then I graduated the University of Gastronomic Science in Piemonte and become a researcher on the gastronomic education. And in 2014, I had the privileges of being the first non-European to be selected under the Italian government's innovative startup program and founded GEN in Milano. So through my culture, my research, I realized the importance of food as the key link to all living systems and society. So this has been the primary inspiration behind the GEN to offer traditional, ecological, food-related, community-based education for global sustainability, focusing on ecosystem restoration. So these authentic and culturally immersive study tour program have been offered to a diverse group of international participants from different fields. So you see mostly people are enjoying something related to the food, but we have some other arena to work on. And then those program is developed in the partnership with UNESCO, Creative Cities, and various governmental ministries activities. So one of my goals with GEN over the past 7 years are dealing with participants from more than 30 countries has been to be a bridge between Japan and the world. So showcasing those sustainable elements with Japanese culture in thousands of years, unique tradition in preserving the natural ecosystem. And especially I focus on soil microorganisms in order to live in harmony with nature by returning everything back to the nature. So today we are going to talk about our past tragedy. But anyway, as you see in a while, I really want to share more about traditional wisdom of Japanese food culture. And then not only telling it, but I want to evolve it to contribute to the critical global issue like a climate change today. So I also believe that the Japanese should be exposed to this greatness of traditional ecological knowledge. So this all came up when I learned about how traditional fermented food prevent people threatened by the risk of atomic disease in Nagasaki. I don't know, some of you already know, but please let me explain. Probably it's not exaggerated to say to me, but it was my starting point of the journey leading up to now. So story is like this. So there is a Japanese doctor called Dr. Akizuki, who was exposed to the radiation at the hospital located 1.4 kilometers away from the hypocenter when the atomic bomb was happening on Nagasaki in 1945. So normally, of course, they'll have a high incidence of illness, but somehow all the staff at the hospital, included Dr. Akizuki, were safe. So he wrote in his book, The Reason Why. And he said, I'm convinced that all hospital workers did not suffer from so-called atomic bomb disease was because of they had a salty miso soup with wakame seaweed every day. So I think some of you know or even have tasted miso soup. But miso is a fermented paste made from soybeans, basically. But today we have a various type, but anyway, principally soybeans that have been matured for over a year in a Japanese fungus called koji. So we mix into hot water and drink it as a soup daily. So in the basement of the hospital in Nagasaki, there were like a food storage of brown rice and miso and seaweed, and preserved with a lot of natural sea salt. So today we still eat miso and seaweed, of course, but those are unfortunately kind of mass-produced products, contain too many additives or some chemical components, and they are not fermented for as long as in the past. So the salt used in those products is also modified and no longer contain the rich mineral and vitamins that the human body helps. So these kind of genuine fermented foods and mineral-rich salt boosted their immune of those who are exposed to the atomic bomb. And as a result, there were fewer cases of bomb disease. So this experience has since been scientifically proven by research team, but by Professor Watanabe in Hiroshima University too. So Dr. Watanabe's research over the past 30 years has scientifically demonstrated that miso can protect the body from the cancer, high blood pressure, stroke, and radiation. So you will find out the evidence on the internet. I think it's just Google it, and then you will find a lot of resources. And then 41 years after, this story spread to European country because that Chernobyl nuclear accident happened. And then I heard that, I really want to know that it's real or not, but I heard that the reality is large volume of Japanese miso was actually exported for people in Chernobyl. And then in 2011, there's also the serious accident of Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant caused by the tsunami, again brought many Japanese people to the attention of this fact and made them realize how important foods such as miso or seaweed in brown rice or in a traditional Japanese diet sustain our immunity. So many households start produce miso at home, which is kind of I think the good kind of movement right now. But it has been already 76 years since Nagasaki and Hiroshima's tragedies. What we can see now, we all pleased with the fact of nature has completely healed. The sea is rich, especially Setouchi area is very famous for the beautiful sea, and the soil is producing abundant crops. So also that the Setouchi Inland Sea is one of the most popular area for the tourists. And then I think almost all, international tourists goes to this point. So of course, the people who live there are healthy and prosperous too. So my question is, how is it possible that in less than 100 years, a place where one of the most prolific tragedies on Earth took place has been able to restore nature and recover people's health and prosperity? To me, it sounds like a miracle. So that is the reason why I wanted to tell the world about Japanese food and nature, and above all about bacteria-rich fermented food and soil microorganisms that have made this extraordinary environmental recovery possible and health benefit for the people. So we work not only for the food, but GAN has a unique program focusing on the architects and the designers who wish to learn about traditional use of natural plant-based material in Japan. So we named this program Sozai, mean material in Japan. And this program teaches the technique of using fermented soil and plant to create the ecosystem in a space in a circular way and sustainable way. So we organized this tour in Hiroshima also, and Inabo participants learned about how local buildings and streets were restored after the World War II. So developed the idea of those type of, not only gastronomy, but also holistic program. We have newly launched a new organization called Genoa International Consortium on 1st of May this year with Italian and Germany and Japanese company to create the holistic platform on soil restoration to take an action. So soil, like a fermented food, is one of the Japan's well-endowed natural resources. I have no doubt. And many biologists said the soil in Japan is one of the highest microbiodiversity in the world. The soil is also the area of concern due to the effect of the nuclear disaster. And Japan must continue to tackle the huge challenge of how to regenerate this contaminated soil. So we need the collective wisdom of the world. Chernobyl, for example, is one of the area of a rich in black soil called Chernobyl Zone. Also one of the most fertile land on Earth. And if we could regenerate the soil in this area, will help to avoid a global food crisis. This is what I believe. So I really hope we could collaborate, Japan and Chernobyl and all around the world, to lead the global soil restoration together. So, okay, I need to refer to about the peace tourism now. So this is what you're seeing now is the tour we organized in the Fukushima 2016. So I think that an important role of peace tourism is not let the tragedy fade away. So, but to turn it in an opportunity to learn from the past. So in order to do this, we should not only focus on the positive side, like the bright news of the recovery, but also should not ignoring on the real voice of local people. Real people has still in the anxieties and suffering, in this area. So you see our previous tour, in 2016, we cooperate with the Cabinet Office of Japanese Ministry of Fukushima. We made program for highly capable top researchers and journalists from all over the world and travel across the food production area and ask them share their experience, also the difficult fact in the society. So by knowing those facts, visitors motivated to encourage the area can become part of the recovery effort as a responsible tourist. And through what they eat, what they wear, and then what they buy, and then even concern about what they throw away as a waste, should all help to heal the land of disaster area. So we want to create a way of traveling like that, and that will be the real regenerative power of the land and the soil. So this is a conclusion of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sato. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. I think Miss Mariana from the state government of the Ukraine tourism is here. Bridget, please.
Yes.
Hello. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
Mariana, please go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
Great.
we can
Yes, we
hear
can.
you.
Great. Nice meeting you. Nice being here. We're discussing this really important topic about Chernobyl and it's this peace for the world. And really the exclusion zone is a unique place we have in Ukraine. And for many people, it opened the influence of people, like what we as a humans can do to nature, and that really nature is taking over at the moment and is winning because trees, they grow via like inside, and they break concrete and they break buildings, and the nature is still there. So in those terms, now in Ukraine, we're trying to call this zone, not exclusion zone, but a zone of revival. And the government and president pays a lot of attention to development of Chernobyl. Also making it possible for visitors to see it and visit it, and to make this visit safe. So I'm grateful that this topic is discussed on the highest international level, and I'm very, very happy to be here, and I wish you a nice day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mariana, for your brief introduction into your domain there. We can see you traveling safely, we hope. And greetings from Germany from my behalf.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Well, it's been a real pleasure to have listened to, the perspectives here already from Chernobyl and also Japan and then Italy. And both these presentations highlighted to me just then the connection between regenerative tourism and transformational travel that I believe Tourism for Peace is all about. And the importance of that connection on a global level to connect us all. And that's what travel and tourism does. We all learn and share insights through experiences, which are emotional, but also of cognitive and spiritual and bodily experiences. So very important messages so far. Thank you very, very much indeed. The next presenter, just I wanted to see if everybody else is available here. Is there any comments at this point in time, Reza, that you wanted to make rather than continuing on?
No, thank you very much. I think we can follow with the next speaker.
Okay, right. I think the next one would be Mary Poppio, if you would like to take the pleasure in presenting for us. We're looking forward to that.
Thank you, Bridget, and thank all of you for all of your amazing insights so far today. It's really such an honor to be speaking at this webinar. It's really an honor to meet all of you like-minded professionals and also all of the people who are watching on YouTube live or maybe after the fact. I'm really, really excited to be able to engage with you all today, especially because all of you care, like me, about promoting peace through tourism and also from so many different parts of the world. So I'm going to go ahead and, like Yukako, just share some slides quickly. Can all of you see my slides?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Excellent, great. So first, to just kind of give you an overview of what I'd like to talk with you about today. Today's discussion, I would like to offer a look into how the youth of Hiroshima are actually using tourism to carry on the legacy of the atomic bomb survivors in pretty innovative ways. And first, I'd like to briefly introduce myself. So my name is, I think, if you wouldn't mind just muting yourselves for audio quality during the presentation, that would be great. And then I think Reza said later we'll be able to take some questions, but I think there's a few participants who aren't muted right now. So if you could all make sure to mute yourselves, that would be excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so my name is Mary Popio, as Bridget introduced me. I'm 29 years old and I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts in the US, around near where Mark is joining from. And I moved to Hiroshima, Japan 5 years ago, where I, along with a team of Japanese, mostly third and fourth generation atomic bomb survivors, and also American colleagues, founded PCV, which is a nonprofit here in Hiroshima. And I get a lot of questions about why 2 years after graduating from college, I decided to move halfway across the world and really immerse myself in Hiroshima's story and work in the peace field. So just to tell you a little bit about my story, I had actually never learned about Hiroshima and Nagasaki all throughout my education as an American. So up until university, right? I had never taken a class that really went into the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We had learned about the Holocaust, but for some reason in studying World War II, we never really touched on this. And so the first time I visited Japan was as a college student. And of course, I went to the Atomic Bomb Museum and I actually heard from an atomic bomb survivor. And my encounter with these survivors really changed my life. Visiting the museum, seeing what America had done to Nagasaki and to Hiroshima. For the first time in my life, I think I seriously came to think about my role and responsibility as a global citizen. I felt embarrassed that I hadn't known this. I felt guilt. I felt the instinct to protect the reputation of my home country. And I felt so incredibly inspired by these atomic bomb survivors in Japan. They're called hibakusha. And the fact that these hibakusha had endured such destruction and such pain, and yet they chose to move forward with an attitude of forgiveness and actually rebuild their city in the image of peace. And these atomic bomb survivors, these are some pictures of me with some of the survivors who I'm closest to here in Hiroshima. But these survivors have long been at the forefront of the movement to eliminate nuclear weapons. As I'm sure many of you know, they've inspired action towards a peaceful, disarmed world with their testimonies. And in my travels to Hiroshima and Nagasaki as a college student, I was able to meet so many young people who, like me, were inspired by the survivors' message of resilience and overcoming insurmountable obstacles, the horrors of nuclear war, and also how all of this connects to our lives today. And many of us young people here in Hiroshima and Nagasaki and around the world have received a mission to tell the stories of the survivors from people around the world. However, the age of the survivors is now 84. And so here in Hiroshima, the question we're asking ourselves all the time is, how do we engage the next generation in ensuring that the lessons learned from these immense human tragedies are not forgotten? And I imagine a lot of other countries in the world are dealing with the same problem, right? As the survivors of World War II decrease, the number decreases. So this is actually an article from a newspaper in Japan last year that tells that 37% of atomic bomb survivor or hibakusha organizations report that they will have to halt or stop their activities by the year 2025. And the two biggest reasons they give are, one, a lack of successors, and two, a lack of money. Right. And so this PCV, or this urgent need to carry on the legacy of the survivors, was our motivation for founding PCV back in 2017. And PCV is a youth-led peace education nonprofit dedicated to creating a sustainable peace culture through tourism and social entrepreneurship and youth empowerment. And you can see from this picture of some of our members, but many of our members, as I said before, are Japanese third and fourth generation atomic bomb survivors in their 10s and 20s and 30s. There are also a few foreigners like me who are pursuing peace-related careers in Hiroshima. And we have a threefold mission at PCV. The first one is to raise human consciousness to a peace culture. And this peace culture was, of course, created and promulgated by the survivors. Our second mission is to cultivate the next generation of peace leaders here in Hiroshima, the next generation that will succeed the survivors. So all of the programs that PCV offers are actually organized and facilitated by young people. So let me introduce you to these young people. So this is the Peace Buddies. They're a team of about 30 young professionals and students who, again, completely run all of PCV's programs. And if you ever come to Hiroshima, I would love to introduce you to them. These young people give me so much hope and inspiration. Each of them has their own motivation for doing peace work, their own field of interest, and all of them are really motivated to spread the story of the survivors and create peace in innovative and new ways. And so these Peace Buddies actually go through training at our online school that PCV runs called Peace Culture Academy. And Peace Culture Academy is our, again, online school for peace culture leaders, young Japanese people who are going to be succeeding the survivors. And the classes at PCA are taught by peace culture leaders from around the world. You can see some of our teachers from this past semester that just ended. We had Nakamitsu-san from the United Nations come and speak to us, Marie-Louise Tuari, who runs a education nonprofit in Rwanda, and many other, Mark was talking earlier about his work in Syria. We have also been connected with young people in Syria. And so these Peace Buddies who are attending our online school and learning from peace culture leaders all around the world, they also are learning to actually verbalize the ways that they want to contribute to building peace in a way that's authentic to themselves, right? They learn about their values, they learn about the world, and then they actually practice presentation skills. We actually collaborate with TED to create TED Hiroshima, where our young people get up on stage and present to the world their hopes and their dreams for the future. And so that's how PCV is really cultivating the next generation of peace culture leaders. But our one final mission is actually to create work in the peace field, right? Like me, when I graduated from college, many young people who graduate from college here in Hiroshima actually want jobs in the peace field. They want to dedicate their careers to peace work, but they can't, because here in Hiroshima, volunteer work is typically, or peace work is typically done volunteer. And so when young people graduate and have to find jobs, they sadly have to stop. And that's a real detriment to creating a sustainable peace movement here in Hiroshima. And so through those three missions, sending peace culture around the world, cultivating the next generation of peace culture leaders, and creating jobs for them so that they can engage in peace work in a sustainable way, we're really trying to carry on the legacy of the survivors. Going back quickly to the topic of this tour, these are actually the Japanese characters for the word tourism, kanko in Japanese. And if you look at the two characters kind of individually, this character means kind of to see, and this character means the light, to see the light. Isn't that beautiful? When we think about tourism, how many of us think about this being the meaning, right? I think early on, PCV, our team, realized the power of tourism to change the world, to help us find our vocations, our passions, to cause us to think about our roles or responsibilities as global citizens, and also to inspire us to learn about the world, as Sergey said in his talk earlier. And in fact, it's thanks to my tourist trip to Nagasaki that I'm now working here in Hiroshima. It absolutely changed my life. And so now PCV is really on the cutting edge of tourism projects here in Hiroshima. We're collaborating with the Hiroshima city government, large Hiroshima banks and companies, travel agencies, and international institutions like the United Nations. And so what I would like to do is actually introduce you to a few ways concretely that PCV is doing this. So the first way is actually through peace and educational tourism. So as you might know, hundreds of thousands of students visit Hiroshima every year to learn about peace. And peace education is actually mandated within Hiroshima Prefecture. So all students must take peace education classes. This is actually our biggest business and our biggest mission here at PCV. These programs, peace education, school field trips, are usually given by the elderly, longtime activists, and hibakusha. The focus of our programs are actually youth mentorship, right? So through these Hiroshima-focused tours, we are, again, using tourism to foster the next generation of peace culture leaders. So here in these photos, you can see our Peace Buddy youth, the ones that I introduced you to before. They're actually spending about a half day with these school field trip students in small groups, guiding them in Peace Park, helping them reflect on their own lives and how they want to make peace in the world. The Peace Buddies share their own motivations, and then they work together on art projects and experience peace through live music. So I'm going to show you the next slide, and you'll be able to see a quick video of what the live music performance looks like. And that was a song actually written by one of our Peace Buddies, who's a singer-songwriter. But anyway, we've been operating this program for about 1 year now, and we've already offered it to thousands of students. So once again, this program is really innovative because one, it's led by young people, which is very unique. Two, all of our young people are paid to run these workshops, so they're not doing it volunteer. And three, this is a fully packaged program. Another thing that PCV is doing to really innovate in the tourism field here in Hiroshima is we're offering the first ever VR walking tour of Hiroshima Peace Park. So if any of you ever visit us at Peace Park, if you come to a building called the Rest House, which is right in the middle of Peace Park, our Peace Buddies, our young people, will actually guide you around Peace Park. And at certain points on the tour, you'll put on a VR headset and you'll actually be transported back to Hiroshima before and during and after the atomic bombing. So you'll be able to see here what was Hiroshima like before the bomb, what happened on August 6th, and then how was Hiroshima able to recover, like Yukako was saying earlier. Then our Peace Buddies with an interest in English or going abroad or global citizenship are actually connecting the world through Hiroshima with our live streamed interactive online programs that use Google Earth. You can see here, there's Japanese school students that are tuning into a live tour of Peace Park. We also connect them with hibakusha, with atomic bomb survivors, and more. And over the last year, we've actually been able to offer this online program to people from 44 different countries. And it's actually become the #1 online program sold by the #1 largest tourism agency here in Japan over this past year. And of course, with coronavirus, there are lots and lots of people who cannot visit the Peace Park. which represents, of course, a problem to us here at PCV. So we've been thinking a lot lately about how can we continue to spread the story of Hiroshima during a pandemic. So with the help of Hiroshima Prefecture and also an American company called Time Looper that creates AR and VR experiences, we created an AR app that allows people to visit Hiroshima from anywhere in the world. And you can see here, we've actually been able to create hibakusha or atomic bomb survivor holograms. So no matter where you are in the world, whether you're in your living room, you can actually hear a survivor give their testimony as if they're right in front of you. And we've actually spoken about our app for many different audiences at the United Nations. We've spoken at the Red Cross, conferences on the SDGs, and we've worked with ICANN as well. And so finally, what I would love to do is actually, if possible, give you all a quick demonstration of our app, just to give you an idea of the kind of innovative projects that the young people here in Hiroshima are working on to really pass on the stories of the survivors. So you should be able to see my iPhone screen. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and try to show you the app. Let's see if it works. All right. So right now I have it on mute so you can hear me talking instead of the app audio itself. But so when you download the app, what you do is you scan whatever surface, your floor or your table. Let's see if it will allow me to scan here. And this app is actually being entered in a competition for one of Japan's top tourism products. So that's another exciting opportunity. So there you go, everyone, this is Hiroshima Peace Park. The rest house where PCV gives tours from every day is this building right here. And over here, you can actually see the atomic bomb dome. So if you click on, for example, this little pinhead here, you can actually get a look at the atomic bomb dome close up. You can make it as big or small as you'd like. And if you click on this, you can actually see photos and narrated audio from the museum. These pictures are from the Atomic Bomb Museum, the Peace Museum here in Hiroshima. And then of course, the thing that for me is the most powerful is the atomic bomb survivor holograms that we've been collaborating with survivors to input into this app. So for example, this is atomic bomb survivor Tanaka Toshiko. And so here Toshiko is, if you had the audio on, she would be here and actually telling you her testimony as if she were really with you in her room. And Toshiko is actually a very close friend of mine here in Hiroshima. And she always talks about how happy she is that she doesn't have to tell her testimony anymore. She's like, I'll leave it to my avatar from now on. So I think this is going to be a really creative way to continue to tell the stories of the survivors into the future. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. And I guess to close, just to say that once again, I feel so privileged to be talking amongst all of you amazing professionals. And PCV is a really young organization. All of the programs I just presented to you all, we actually just started all of them last year in July. And so I believe our organization, our young people all have a lot of potential, and we're looking for mentors, for altruists to collaborate and to exchange in the field of spreading peace through tourism. And we're also, looking for people to sponsor Hiroshima youth attending Peace Culture Academy and invest in the future of Japanese tourism leaders. And we're really hoping to get inspired by all of your projects as well. So if, I've been listening to all your presentations and been daydreaming about all the amazing ways we might collaborate, either online or in person, to kind of spread peace among all of our different communities. So I really encourage you, if you have any ideas, to please reach out. But with that, I will end my comments, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mary. Most, again, insightful and very encouraging to see and hear about the creativity that is obviously happening all around us and all the projects that's been presented. I'm quite in awe, actually, of all that's what's happening. What really touches me just at the moment here, before I go any further, is how we are shifting from, when we're talking about Chernobyl and Hiroshima and all those atrocities that have happened around the world, and we're talking about dark tourism as such within academia, but what I can see is a shift, particularly in your projects and also the projects previously, in Japan and Italy and everywhere else, really, is a movement to what I believe Japan is very much doing, is promoting hope tourism. And I think that's a wonderful notion to actually take it into that sphere, which then links back to where Mark was coming from, that we need to, go back to the past and touch base with our negative emotions and experiences and look at the meaning of that. But what does it say about us where we are now, and what can we do for the future? And just listening to all of the projects just presented here, as I said, I'm very touched. And I'm delighted to actually be asked to be present here today. So thank you once again. I don't know if anybody else wants to make comments. I haven't really spoken about myself very much. I tend to rather prefer to sit back and listen to everybody else's.
I think Dr. Kalambri has...
May I say something? I think we're all privileged to have Mary with us. Mary, you've done a great job here, really. Being an American and taking a special interest in Japan, that's a very important task. Step to start with. Then the Japanese people have created a miracle, really, on land, because they turned a crisis into an opportunity. They turned the crisis into a hope. And I want to salute the Japanese people here in front of me. Mary, you're doing a great job. We're all here to help you. Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you. I think if the Japanese young people I work with know that you told us that, they will be so excited. So thank you so much for your encouragement.
I really mean it. I really mean it.
A wonderful presentation. Wonderful presentation. Very nice. Excellent.
Yes. Again, thank you very much, everybody else. I don't know if anybody else wants to make a comment. Perhaps I can conclude, seeing that I'm present here, as to my involvement in this. How I got to be involved in this, as Reza initially pointed out. Sorry, someone wanted to comment? No? I have, my engagement with all of this is through my background in travel and tourism in the industry, but also then as an academic. Now, my path has also not been quite a straightforward one. I was working in the industry for many years in airlines and hotels and agencies and retail and tour guiding and consultancy. Then I became a mother and had children, and then I started to study at the age of 39 to start with my undergraduate degree, to finish off with my PhD in tourism management, with a focus on special interest tourism, particularly the engagement of people not to travel in body, mind and soul, really. And the focus was on the emotional involvement of tourists and what it meant, the meaning of traveling and the contribution to their identity, really. So I suppose I'm in line a little bit with Mark's work, which is also that of positive psychology. The book that I eventually wrote came about because of my experience, the last one in Dubai, and my return back to Australia, when I mentioned to people waiting in a bus stop, when they asked me why I didn't know how to catch a local bus, where I'd come from. And I said I'd just come from living and working in Dubai. And the response, that was in 2012, was quite disconcerting and motivated me to write the book. The response was, oh, the Arabs, how can you live there as a female and as a blonde person, and all these stereotypes that go along with it. That shocked me, and I asked, have you actually experienced Arab culture? Do you know anybody from that culture? Have you ever gone there and visited? And of course, the response was no, not really. I just transited at the airport. So that made me realize there was a dichotomy between traveling and as a tourist and being seen to be globally recognized as someone who is knowledgeable as a tourist. But somehow the gap between reality when you come home, that it takes on a different meaning. And what you do when you're away on holidays and you take on touristhood, as Jafari so appropriately called it, versus when you come home and you act again on different value systems. I think, Mary, you just mentioned the importance of recognizing the importance in our lives of needs and value systems, that we operate from our value systems. But many people don't actually know their value systems. So coming back to my project with a book, I then thought, well, how can I contribute to this misconception or ignorance, possibly, supposedly by tourists? But I also had recognized in the meantime that ignorance was also prevalent among a lot of people working in the travel industry. So I believe that we are all travelers in life, and we are visitors here on Mother Earth, whether we work in the travel industry or not, whether we are tourists or whether we live somewhere at a destination. We all need to touch base with who we are, how we feel, what our needs are and our values, and get to know through that how other people's needs and value systems might relate to our sense of peace, our sense of inner peace, but also that of outer peace, how we connect with each other, whether we are willing to, approach people, whether we are fearful, etc., etc. So that, in a way, is what my book addresses, the way of the peaceful traveller. And my notion was to foster among anybody who would, pick up this book. Again, it's anybody at all who, I believe we're all leaders and change makers in our daily lives, in our business environment, but also in politics. And we all need to start with ourselves to get to know who we are. So it's important for all of us to learn about emotions and how they impact us in our decision making and our actions. That is a starting point. But once we know our emotions, then we can say, how do you feel? Why do you feel the way you do? And what can we do about it? And that then takes us into the level of tourism for peace and peace through tourism. It is through the experiential aspect of traveling that we get exposed as people, connecting with people. We all smile, we cry, we see how people live. We don't just see and hear about the culture as if they are in textbooks. We can see the culture that is there in the present day, whether that is Chernobyl, whether it's Japan, whether it's Italy, and all these lovely projects that are out and about, the peace parks that are present, and the tours that are available are all there to let us experience the reality of life. And there's nothing more that educates us than the real life experiences, when we feel the energy of people around us, the joy or the sadness, whatever it is. And that actually changes our perspectives on things. We can read as much as we like, we can listen to all sort of webinars or Zoom sessions, but until we really are there at the place of the destination, can we immerse ourselves and experience that? That is so important. And that, I think, came out of all the presentations today, whether that is Mary's or Yukako or again Sergei's. And I think that is what we need to promote in tourism and peace through tourism. Where I've come from as an educator, but also from industry, is a project that was initiated by IIPT, I think it was in 2016, 2017, that every traveller is an ambassador for peace. And that comes back to the credo of peace. And the peace is actually, peace starts within ourselves, and it's peace about being with others and peace within the environment and peace spiritual, etc. So it's a larger picture. When I realized that my book title, which I chose coincidentally, aligned with that particular credo, I was quite delighted, because we need to all work together. And I think, Mary, you just highlighted that as well, and Yukako and everybody else, that we need to collaborate and use whatever we have to promote the whole notion of peace and peaceful coexistence. Which is at the bottom of my heart, is how can we live together peacefully, and that is with each other and with ourselves and also the environment. That is roughly my sort of contribution to what's been presented here today. Again, I'd like to sort of finish off with the notion of we learn from the past. And I say we learn from the past, and we should do that with humility. And we should live in the present with honesty. And we should look to the future with hope. And I think that's where we're talking about now with peace tourism. It should be very much that of hope tourism, which is coming through more and more, rather than that just of, dark tourism. But that's the past history. We learn from that. One important aspect that always comes to mind, and always I encounter that when I often talk to people, value systems. We're talking about value management, in whether it's in industry, whether it's in our daily lives, whether it's in education and so forth. And everybody reiterates their own values, their personal values. Often I'm then asked, well, how do you demonstrate your values? Do you live by peace, by the value system? What is it that you do? It's like love. It's not just falling in love. What do you do for love? How do you demonstrate that? And it's known that the proclaimed values are an easy one to stipulate, but to then say, actually, I do live by those values, which sometimes asks of us to compromise certain aspects in our daily lives, which might be things that are normally received or perceived as comfort zones. And I think we should all step out of our comfort zones and expose ourselves to these learnings that come from all the things that were talked about today and presented. It's very enriching, and it makes us who we are from the bottom of our hearts. And, once we can speak and talk to each other heart to heart, that is actually where I believe peace connection starts. I'd like to possibly finish off with one comment, which again is important to me, and that's the one by Kofi Annan. It is regards to the proclaimed values. And he says, we need to find within ourselves the will to live by the values we proclaim in our private lives, in our local and national societies, and in the world. And if we keep that in mind, I think we are all on the same path of promoting peace and tourism for peace and peace through tourism. That is my concluding comment here. I'd like to hand over again.
Thank you so much, wonderful.
And I'd like to hand over back to you.
Mark.
I think Mark has comments here or questions. Yes.
Oh, just a small comment. Brigitte's final comments were the best, their best conclusion. But I do want to highlight the importance in all of the speakers of the power of story. We're trying to connect an entire globe of 7 billion people, and we can't travel everywhere. But on the other hand, the travel has all changed all of our lives on this call. So on the one hand, we want people to travel, we want people to meet, but we also want the power of story to transform all of us. So what Sergei taught us from his story, from Yukako, and from the way in which Mary's technology is facilitating story across the world, we need to merge all of our methodologies into a way in which people can find truth through story, where they can't always find it in the middle of conflict, in the middle of misinformation, but they can relate to somebody else's story. And it's a whole of brain experience. It's the mind and the heart and the imagination. And young people in particular, they can't just relate to horror of the past. They have to imagine the future. The imagination of the future and the building of the future is the key to everything we're talking about. And a lot of young people have their whole lives ahead of them. We want these stories to inform an imagined future that's much, much better in places like Chernobyl than it was in the past. And it's very, very hard task. Conflict is constant in history, but there are imagined futures that make conflict a thing of the past between Anglos and Saxons in England, because there are no more Anglos and Saxons. They're all one people. And, there are places where an imagined story together changed history and people did become one. So let's just keep on working on sharing all of our stories virtually, high tech, amazing methodologies, and we all have a lot in common here. It's really an honor and a pleasure to learn from all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Yes. I'd like to, again, as you just said, I think we need to collaborate, and it's been highlighted by everyone, and look at other contributors to the notion of peace through tourism or tourism for peace. And I'm sort of linked quite distinctly with people also working in the field of transformative travel. There's a journal out called the Transformational Travel Journal, which is a beautiful, again, tool for travellers to use to reflect on their experiences. Again, I can highly recommend that. And also, of course, the notion of regenerative tourism. I think that's been highlighted by Yukako and her example again. Regeneration, how can we regenerate, which is Earth, which is our society, with our coexistence as humanity with in the environment. And hopefully doing that in a positive notion, as is the highlight, Mark, is we can only really be proactive when we can see some future, when we are hopeful. Without that, we lose faith and will not proceed. So let's just all, stay together and definitely connect again after this and see if we can do more about it. Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. With all of this, I'm happy to perhaps pass it back to Reza, unless there are questions or some comments by anybody who's online and anybody else would like to say something.
May I give a short comment?
Yes.
Okay, many thanks. Well, first of all, I would like to express once more my huge gratitude to all participants for their valuable and really heartfelt insights and experience. And I would like to particularly single out, from my point of view, very informative and stimulating presentation of Mari Popea from Japan, from Hiroshima. Chernobyl tour is so successful because here it is exactly the guys, the girls and boys, so to say, roughly about 30 years old, who run the show, and I am kind of advisor, I don't know, exhibitor of Chernobyl or whatever. And so it is the energy of youth which eventually win. And I especially like, this, what I would call healthy American approach of Marys, who speak about sustainability of important humanitarian function, of humanitarian social work, of peace sharing, peace educating, I would call it. And it is also this line of the essence of Chernobyl tourism, because as the practice and the research of the Chernobyl tourism has proved, it is a mandatory component of the complex of proper mitigation work of massive radiation accident. It has, 7 important functions, and I realized that after important authorities and citizens of Fukushima started to arrive to Ukraine just several months after the accident in order to learn our technology, our approaches, and to transfer and to implement it in Fukushima as the means of economic recovery, of psychological recovery, and so on and so forth. And so we are speaking here about a larger notion of post-radiation accident tourism, which I call this global phenomenon roughly. And then I also liked in Mary's presentation the exact formats of their work. And as you may notice from my T-shirt and from logo, I am a founder and at the moment the director of the Chernobyl University, an institution, a startup which strives to promote Chernobyl experience. And we receive on regular basis excursion from the University of Europe, of the States, from Japan, and we also started to receive even the whole courses. For example, with the University of New Haven from the United States, we had a field course from World War to Cold War, where we visited Chernobyl installations, which I have already mentioned to you, and also places of the massive combats of the World War II near Kiev. Just as a matter of fact, crossing of the Dnipro River is the biggest river crossing not only in the World War II, but in the whole military history. And also near Kiev, there was a big encirclement of the Soviet troops. And so I believe that we will think over and perhaps modify and incorporate the formats which Mary talked about in our practice. And I believe that what is most important that our event it's not only about let's say speaking and exchanging intellectual experience. It is an important practical networking tool. I'm very glad that I am part of it, and that it was the Chernobyl event, the Chernobyl place and the Chernobyl tourism that inspired this important step in our collaboration and in promoting peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sergey. Thank you. Looking forward for our cooperation in the organizing the peace tours. Also, many other people are interested, and hopefully we can create a big network of the peace-loving people around the world, including Mark already and Marianne and others to create those tours, which is really necessary. I would like also to say hello to my dear friend, Sedat Selik, Dr. Sedat Selik, professor. He has written many articles. He's here, I see him. He has written many important articles about the stereotyping and tourism and racism, which is also very important issues. We have in fact published one of his articles before, and we had very important webinar about the stereotyping with Dr. Taleb Rafai. It was very interesting and important because finally we should not forget racism, stereotyping, all those issues exist in tourism. So we should try to make tourism more meaningful, including creating a peace. Tourism is not only for the sea and sand and the selfie and the Instagram. It has
That's
also
right.
lots of functions.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there is a gentleman from India asked the question, Mr. Mir Abdul Safiq, if you are still here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay,
I'm very
sir.
much here.
Okay.
I'm very
So
much
please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, my question is that lots of universities in the world, they're offering courses in tourism, but is there any specific university they are offering course in tourism and peace? That is my first question. Number two is that is there any scope of collaboration or collaborative study on peace and tourism?
Yes. If I may I respond to that?
Yes, sure, of course.
Thank you so much. Okay, my dear friend, you should contact IIPT, International Institute for Peace Through Tourism. IIPT is an institution that is over 30 years old, has a very big presence in India as well. And it has a very big branch in India. I think it's a very good start there. About universities, I'm not the best qualified to know that. But I think we have heard about Chernobyl University now. And I think there will be other universities in Japan as well. Many, many universities will welcome initiatives like this. Thank you so much.
Also, I would like to thank Ms. Mariana Olsiv, the state president of the tourism of Ukraine. She joined us from her car. She had lots of work today. Thank you so much. Thank you of the government of Ukraine and the tourism authority of Ukraine as well. And of course, Sergey from Chernobyl and Dr. Taleb Rafai, as always, that honors us, Mark.
Thank you.
Bridget, Mary, I think I named everybody. I don't know if there are any other questions.
Yukako.
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 Thank you.
Sedat, do you want to say
Definitely.
something?
Definitely.
Sedat, do you want to say something?
Thank you,
Yes,
Reza.
Mr. Razak. Firstly, thank you
Yes.
for this online course. I think it will be better for all of people to explain the peace and tourism. And we know this you building a project about this issue. So I want to say just one suggestion. We know all people say tourism building a peace, but really we don't have a lot of study about this issue in experimental design method or project or article. So we have to grow this area, I think. So maybe in the next online course, maybe some researcher can speak about this.
Sure, thank you.
Yes, I'd just like to quickly make a comment to that, Siddharth, and I think you're quite correct in that a lot of literature is somewhat contradictory as to the benefit of tourism for peace, particularly when we look at macro and micro level of peace that we're talking about. I think today's presentation has highlighted that it's a practical level of experience at an individual level where it all starts, where that transition has enormous impact as to how that then translates that into an accumulative effect, whether that is policy development or destination development and so forth. That is something that needs to be highlighted amongst practitioners and also perhaps politicians as to the value systems that we're operating on. And I'm not talking purely on individual value systems, but very much societal cultural value systems. And that is actually where the big of the mindset shift has to happen, because we're very much operating from a mastery perspective rather than a harmony perspective. So there's a lot of work to be done. Research-wise, I think you're quite correct, Siddharth. There needs to be a lot more research done in this whole area, and anybody involved. I'm personally not involved in that research anymore, but I'm sure there are plenty of other people around. And again, let's collaborate on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, please.
I'm Rahel from Ghana, and I want to know I want to know whether these disaster tourism sites are really studied in schools, because I got to know about this the first time as I applied for a scholarship in a Hungarian society. I took up the course of tourism and catering. So I want to know how this will help people get to know more about these dark tourism sites in Africa.
May I say something, Reza, please?
Sure, please.
Okay. Now, let's establish one fact. Tourism does not by itself alone create peace. We have to design this. We have to be conscious about it. Visiting a place alone is not the solution. We have to design this visit. We have to go with the right attitude to start with, because it doesn't happen simultaneously like this. Sometimes people go visit places and come back with negative impacts because they keep themselves isolated from the community, from the surrounding community. All-inclusive models, for example, are very anti-social, and they keep all visitors alone. They don't interact with the community. We need to design this. We need to be very positive about it. We need to be aggressive about it. We can't just let things happen the way they are naturally like this. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I want to add to that, Mark, over here. I can't emphasize enough. It's a very important question you've raised. What is not apparent to the naked eye is how much care goes into making this a safe experience that is positive and educational, and that doesn't create more polarization and more war. It's very important for this to become a safe experience for the activists like yourself, and not one that invites more conflict and more threats. So we don't talk about how we went about doing that as much, or why my work in Syria. I've never lost anybody, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of Syrian women. It's a very, very careful process of empowering positive stories, resilience, learning from history, without creating more war. So there's a lot more to study about that. And you've asked the right first question. But the most important thing is the old adage, do no harm. Make sure that this is something that's going to do good and not harm, and protect your lives first and foremost.
That's right.
Again, I'd like to also briefly comment, and I'm very glad that Dr. Taleb, that you verified that you mentioned the whole notion of designing the experiences, because a majority of mass tourism experience is very much that on the old notion of sun and, you know, the various S's, rather than learning and exploring and becoming a peaceful traveller, if I may say so, or peace-sensitive traveller, perhaps more so than anything else. And I think what is being missing, even when I look at industry, product development or destination management and marketing, that the emphasis is still quite on the old premise, the old ways of doing tourism rather than the new ways of doing tourism. And I think where we are now in the process of coronavirus, we've had time to think where we take this of what we have learned. Are we really committed, as I said before, to the values that we proclaim? You know, there's so much rhetoric going on, but there needs to be a commitment, and it has to be across the spectrum, whether that is, as I said, development, management and marketing at destinations, the external development, product development managers that come in and design the experiences, come in and go out into destinations, take out what they can and leave the places with no benefits. All of that, but everybody has to work together. And I think that's the big message perhaps also today that I like to actually instill with my book, which people perceive it's meant for tourists. And actually it's not. It's very much meant for anybody who believes they are there, they can do better, the world can do better, that we are all leaders in our daily lives. And that applies to whether we travel, on holidays or on business, or whether we're at home. The principles apply across the board. We are all just here travellers on Mother Earth and visitors, and we all have not only rights but also responsibilities. So thank you very much for that.
Very true, very true, very true. Thank you so much. Thank
you. Okay, I think.
Okay, are there any other questions? No. Okay, so I think we will end here. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating in this. For some of you, for Mari, it's quite late. I think it's almost 12. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful dream. Thank you, Taleb. Thank you, Mark, Bridget, Dr. Saito, Mary. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for this. The recording will be ready in a few hours and online. And of course, my dear friend, Sergey, Desvidanya, and God bless the people of Ukraine. And hopefully there will be a peace. This nation is a really peaceful. Ukraine is a wonderful and beautiful country. You should visit it, and it's safe. And God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reza. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sergey, I want to ask you a question. Is Ivan still there in charge of Ivan?
Yeah, sure.
Is he still in charge of tourism? You know, Ivan.
Sergey.
Yeah.
Sergey, do you hear Taleb?
Yeah, no, not
you know
quite.
Ivan. Ivan. You know Ivan.
I have not heard about him for a while, but I will call him right now and tell that you was curious about him.
Please, he's a good man. He's a good Ukrainian.
Excellent.
He's a good. Yes, he's a good Ukrainian. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck and good health to you and to everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, Mary.
See you.
Bye, Mary.
Bye.
So much.
Thank you.
Get in touch with you.
Don't forget to visit our website, Tourism Webinar, all the recordings and the past webinars. And for your information, in November, we will have new webinars with several museums, including the War Museum Vietnam. They're here. Thank you so much. And the Genocide Museum of the Cambodia, and Rwanda. So it's all about those museums that the people are visiting and they should learn something about it. Of course, all of you are invited and I will send you the updates. Thank you so much and goodbye and good night and good morning.
Good night, everybody. Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.